those that have followed me for a while, you will know that I'm very anti-probationary periods, and that towards the end of 2024, I released a video about the Employment Rights Bill and the incoming changes to unfair dismissal and the importance of probationary periods going forward, which means I have to do a complete U-turn on my advice. And that is exactly what this video is about. It's about probationary periods, it's about onboarding, it's about how we get it right, how we do it in the best way possible to be legally compliant going forward, and why we need to be planning this right now. For those that don't know me, haven't seen me before, my name's Jenefer. I'm the founder of Silk Helix. We're a HR consultancy that specialises in neurodiversity. So of course I'll be considering neurodiversity as part of this, and this is going to make your onboarding process better for everyone when we take account of neurodiversity, because we have a lot to learn from those who are neurodivergent, who just make us think in slightly different ways. So diving right in then, what are probationary periods? What's my view on them? Why have they changed? I'm going to start with that bit because I think that's a really important thing. So currently probationary periods aren't legally defined, but they are in common use, and the current legislation says if we've got them, we have to tell people about them in their statement of particulars, so on day one of employment at the very latest. I don't like them because the word probation has negative connotations. It's saying you're on trial. It's not very welcoming. And I've heard of people saying that they don't feel like they've got a permanent contract because they're on probation, or they won't change their LinkedIn profile to say that they've joined a company because they're on probation. So people don't feel part of the team during this period. And I think that's a real negative, and it's not going to change. So if you start somebody in that negative way, suddenly at 6 months at the end of that probationary period, that's not going to change. Which is why up until now, my advice has been don't have probationary periods. You don't need them. You've got 2 years where unfair dismissal, you can't claim ordinary unfair dismissal. There are exceptions to that, which I won't be going into in this video. But essentially, employers have got a 2-year probationary period that we just don't need to tell people about. So let's be more welcoming. Let's talk about onboarding. Let's talk about welcoming people to the team. However, it's all going to change with the Employment Rights Bill, which will come into effect towards the end of 2026. So it's time we need to be preparing for this now, because gradually we're going to lose that 2-year period. We're already eating into it now when that new legislation comes into force. There is still ongoing consultations regarding the Employment Rights Bill, but essentially what we think is going to happen and what it says at the moment is that unfair dismissal will become a day one right. However, there will be a statutory probationary period, which is expected at the moment to be 9 months. So what the Employment Rights Bill is changing when it comes into force next year is that probationary periods will become part of the statutory process. So unfair dismissal will become a day one right, with the exception that there will be like a light touch process. So to avoid unfair dismissal, you have to go through a full disciplinary process to dismiss somebody for capability or conduct issues. Under the new legislation, there will be a light touch process. We're yet to find out what that actually means, and that will apply during a probationary period, which we understand will be up to 9 months. So it is going to be essential for employers to have that probationary period to allow themselves to deal with any hires that have gone wrong. So where you've got the wrong person in the wrong job, you're needing to deal with it really quickly. That said, that doesn't happen very often. So really you want to be structuring your process around the positives. And we are much less likely to see it go wrong when we get onboarding right. I think estimations are that about 28% of people leave jobs within 90 days, and those that don't leave are left not particularly engaged, they don't perform well, they have higher absence rates, and they're just not aligned with the mission of the company. And that's pretty serious. If we don't get that onboarding right, that welcome, that's essentially what we mean by onboarding, is that welcome into the team. If we don't get it right, it's costly. And it shouldn't take us 2 years to work out whether or not somebody is right for the role. If we get that early stage right, we can identify fairly quickly if we've got it wrong. And as I say, these should be the rare cases. If it's happening often, perhaps we need to go back and look at the recruitment process and see what's going on there. So we are going to need to put this in place. How do we do it? So my recommendation is going to be that we really focus on the positives and people achieving. And as I often say with other things, if we do that, if we focus on the positives, we focus on people achieving, Those that don't will come out in the wash, and we will be able to deal with it because we've got the right things in place. We don't need to worry about the small minority that are not going to work out. We need to worry about the majority that are going to work out. We don't know yet whether we are going to have to use the term probation. That will be part of the consultation. Currently, there's a phrase, the early point of employment. I think it is something around that. So we'll wait and see on what phrasing that we need to use, but we want to try and be as positive as possible. And the onboarding process, it starts at recruitment, actually starts at the advert, because that's where you're setting your first impressions. Don't forget, we can't make a first impression for a second time. So that is counting towards that onboard process. And then, of course, when we offer the job role, that's counting too. So providing people with as much information as we can to welcome them into the team right from that point is absolutely crucial. So getting this right is not going to happen by accident. How we get probationary periods right starts with a plan. And that plan needs to be written down, and it has to be written down because otherwise it will get forgotten. And particularly the key things, because once we're settled into an organisation, or those of us that are business owners, we know our business inside out. It is so hard for us to think about somebody coming in and what they don't know, because we are operating often in this state of what it just is, it just happens, this is what it is, and we're not really thinking about it. For a new starter, they are thinking about every single thing. They are learning every single thing. So we need to make sure that an onboarding plan, including probation, is written down, it's really clear, and everybody knows. So the individual knows what to expect, we know what we're going to deliver. And that this is structured and that we're thought about. We can't just give everyone the information on day one. That's not going to work. It's too much overload. How are we going to spread this out? What do we need to give them in advance? What do they need to have on day one? What do they need to have by the end of the first week? First month, ongoing, how long is this going to take? And that's going to depend on the nature of the company, the nature of the job role, how long this takes for people to get everything they need to be fully up to speed. Absolutely crucial, this one. Do not forget the basics. Your health, your safety, your culture basics. So these are things like, how do I escape the building in a fire? How often is that forgotten that we don't tell people that? Where are the toilets? Again, often forgetting that we don't tell people the basics. Things like, where do I go to the toilet? Is there rules around toilet breaks? Is that because we are running a factory line, we need rules around toilet breaks? Actually, is it more free and we go as and when? We need to be really clear with people about these things, particularly if there's rules around it. And then there's things that are more cultural, like, where do I make a cup of tea? Where's the kitchen? Whose milk is whose in the kitchen? Can we help ourselves to the milk? Is there rules around who use what mug? They're unwritten rules because actually that mug is that person's favourite and I should not touch it, because it's really easy as a new starter to cause offence by getting the tea round wrong or being in the kitchen when you shouldn't be, or whatever it is. We need to know. I need the comfort. For me, I'm a tea drinker. I need to know where that tea is, because if I don't keep my caffeine intake going up, then I'm going to struggle to focus. So that's just me personally. Obviously, we all have different preferences and needs, but making sure that we've thought about that. Where can you top up your water bottle or get a glass of water from? We forget these things when we're in something regularly. It seems so normal, but yet it's not. These are the things that we just need somebody just to direct us on. And particularly important if somebody's neurodivergent, where picking up on social cues can be much more challenging. So it's more important to be really explicit around what the expectations are, how things are done around here. And it does make people settle in more quickly. They're less likely to offend somebody. They're less likely to feel anxious about what they're doing, when they're doing it, how they're doing it. And that's going to make everything feel a lot calmer and easier. So do not forget those real basics, the health, the safety, your culture stuff. Make sure that people are aware of that. Then the next part, of course, is your job expectations. And this really is your kind of probationary period bit. So this is what's expected of you in this job role. How does the job role look? What are we expecting you to achieve? And in particular, what are we expecting you to achieve in the probationary period or the onboarding period? We recognise that you're here right now. We expect you to be here by 6 months, by 3 months, whatever that period is. And in the meantime, to make sure you get there, this is your onboarding plan. We're going to make sure that you've got all of this training or support And that could just be things like sitting next to somebody, shadowing, having demonstrations, time just to try out and get used to the software, whatever it is, making sure that we've given somebody the time, the support and the resources to get them into the job role. And we get them into achieving pretty quickly. So don't leave the first week with, here's a stack of paper and the user manuals for everything we use. Just sit and read them. You'll pick it all up. We're only considering one learning preference in that. And also we're just overloading someone with information that they've got no context to hang it off and that they're feeling like they're not achieving something. There's no sense of achievement in that. So we want to get somebody into the work as quickly as we possibly can as well. And I've mentioned a few things in there around learning preferences. There's going to be training and learning throughout the onboarding period, whether that's your absolute basics like health and safety training, data protection training, how to use the software, or whether it's bigger training because somebody's been brought in who has been brought in for their attitude rather than their skills. So we know they didn't have the skills and therefore we've got to provide those, or it's something specific to our company that we're providing, or we're trying to get people to a level. Whatever it is, there's going to be training of some degree in the induction period. And it's essential that we consider different learning preferences. So whether people are reading, taking on audio, watching videos at their own pace, attending a training day. If they're attending a training day, does that really need to be talking at people, just giving information for a whole day? Could that be broken up into sort of smaller videos, which is more convenient for both the person delivering and the person receiving that information? So just considering different learning preferences, how people take on information, and crucially allowing people the time to process that information. Don't just give it and go, oh yeah, we've done, we told them that. People need the opportunity to process, and sometimes will need to be told things multiple times, because bear in mind on your first day, week in a new job, everything is new. Every face you see is new. Every surrounding you see is new. Everything is new information, and that's a lot for our brains to process. And so it's also really important then that although we have a written plan, and often that written plan will go across the board. So things like health, safety, culture, that might apply to the whole company. But it's also really important then that you tailor that plan to the individual. So being very person-centric in how we do things. So this is about getting to know the individual, the style of management that's going to give them the best support that they need, making sure that the training is tailored. So we're taking into account their pre-existing skills, knowledge, experience, when we're tailoring what training they need rather than just shoving everybody into the same thing, making sure that we're really focused around that. And when we're looking at neurodiversity, for example, this may well be where your workplace needs assessments come in. So if you've got somebody who particularly struggles with certain areas because of a neurodiversity, you've probably recruited them because they've got some really good strengths. Take a look at some of my other videos around neurodiversity and the business benefits of employing people with neurodivergent conditions, the strengths they bring. But those strengths come with challenges. And that's kind of the point of neurodivergent conditions, that spiky profile of having really, really good strengths and real challenges. Sometimes somebody will have a really good understanding of their own challenges and be able to talk you through exactly what they need, what will help them. Others don't have such a good understanding or struggle to be able to explain or to know what's on offer. And therefore, workplace needs assessments can be really useful for making sure that you've got the right supports in place so you really do get those business benefits of those strengths. And finally, the key thing to remember is reviewing regularly. So checking in with people. In the first week, that's probably going to be their daily basis. It may then go to a weekly basis, a monthly basis. That check-in allows you as a manager to raise any concerns, to iron out things. So if somebody's doing something wrong because they've picked it up in the wrong way, we want to really quickly get in and say, oh no, actually we do it like this, and get that changed, because otherwise somebody's just going to get into those bad habits. We also need them to come to us with questions, concerns, know that they've got the time, particularly if people are running around, it's all busy around them, or they're remote workers, so they're not seeing a manager on a day-to-day basis, making sure somebody's got the time to check in and say, how's this going? Have you got any questions? And then, of course, these are also the times where we're going to pick up performance. So we may well incorporate performance reviews into this. So looking at, okay, we set the expectations at the beginning. How's the progress going? Has the training been delivered? Has the support been delivered? How are you then receiving that? Are you performing at the level we need you to? And that's where we're going to pick up really quickly somebody who isn't working out. We expect through a probationary period or an onboarding period that somebody is going to be gradually increasing to get to that full level and running on full steam. If they are progressing at the right state, great, and we can look at, okay, what's next in the review and what they've done really well. If they're not, if they're kind of down here and actually we expect them to be up here, we need to have that conversation really quickly and early. It might turn things around. They might not have realised. There might have been training that's been missed, and we can solve that, get them settled in and get it fixed. Or we find that we've employed the wrong person and we then need to deal with that quickly as well. And that might result in a dismissal. And any dismissals, I would strongly advise that you take advice, because even with the unfair dismissals, 2 years service or any probationary period and things that kind of come into there, we could have automatic unfair dismissals. So it's worth taking advice just to check that there are no risks before you get into that. So that's my roundup of probationary periods and onboarding. I still do not like the term probationary period. I'm not very happy that that term is coming into play with the new employment rights bill. However, onboarding is really important. I do feel that without onboarding, and the evidence shows us that without successful onboarding, people will either leave or not be great performers, and that's not good for business. So we can incorporate the two together and make it really positive, even with the new legislation coming in. It's going to be more important than ever that employers really focus on this and don't leave it to nearly 2 years down the line and go, yeah, this has never really worked out and now we're figuring we need to do something. You need to be on it, get a plan in place, know what you're going to do and start planning that now, because it's only going to benefit you to start planning that now. Know what you need to be doing. Get people onboarded really well, welcomed into the team, and you will find that actually you'll get better performance overall long term when you do that. So it's got business benefits as well. If you're finding the content useful, do hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. A little like goes a long way with us sharing our channel as well. And do come back. We produce videos every single week, so do come back for more videos, and I will see you next week.